There are many horror games. Some shock you, some entertain you, but very few carve their way into the quiet parts of your mind the way Dead Space does. Its violence is memorable, yes. The Necromorphs, the corridors, the sound tearing through metal and bone. But this isn't what makes Dead Space endure. What lingers is the loneliness. The kind that makes the silence deafeningly loud. A loneliness shaped by empty hallways that once held life. By doors that hiss open not to reveal a monster, but to remind you that no one is coming. Not now, not ever. Dead Space isn't frightening because of what hunts you. It's frightening because of what it takes away from you. The comfort of proximity, the reassurance of another human voice, the illusion that you are still connected to anything at all. Inside the Ishimura, loneliness isn't atmosphere. It is the enemy. It wears you down one corridor at a time until the ship feels less like a place you're exploring and more like a reflection of a mind collapsing under its own silence. Few games understand isolation the way this one does. Few dare to make you sit with it, and fewer still make you feel the weight of being truly and utterly alone. Because loneliness doesn't just surround you, it seeps in, slowly at first, like a cold draft through a cracked door, freezing you slowly. Then all at once, like the door blew off the hinges, you start to feel the ship start to move with you. Not alive, not conscious, just there, present in a way no human voice is, present in a way that starts to replace the voices you wish you could hear. And that's when Dead Space becomes something more than just horror. It becomes a study of what isolation does to a mind that longs for hope, a mind that still wants to believe in rescue, in reason, in connection. Even when the hallways insist those things are gone. Isaac never screams. He never monologues his fear. He never tells you what the silence is doing to him. But you could feel it. In the way he breathes, shallow and shaking behind the helmet. In the way he moves, always like someone carrying the memory of a world that no longer exists. Loneliness makes him quiet, but it also makes him relentless. Because somewhere inside that silence, there is still a thread pulling him forward. Thin, frayed, almost broken, but enough to keep him moving. And that is the cruel truth Dead Space holds up to the light. You don't survive isolation just by being courageous. You survive it by refusing to stop moving. Even when every part of you is begging to stop. As the ship decays around him, as the dead twist into something unrecognizable, Isaac just becomes a mirror, showing how a human mind bends, fractures, and rebuilds itself under the pressure of absolute solitude. Dead Space isn't about monsters crawling through vents. It's about the quiet horror of realizing you are the last thing in a collapsing world. And if you break, that's it. The end. But loneliness isn't the only thing stalking Isaac. The Necromorphs aren't just enemies. They're symbolic. Raw, physical expressions of what happens when a mind has nowhere left to put its fear. Every Necromorph was human once. That's the first truth the game forces you to swallow. Not an alien, not a creature born in darkness. A person, like you and me. A body twisted into a shape that only makes sense if you've abandoned the idea that humanity is something stable. They are what the mind becomes when it can't cope, when it bends past the point of repair, when survival costs more than it can afford. They lurch towards you with limbs that shouldn't function, screaming with mouths that shouldn't move, and every moment feels wrong because it is wrong. They are a manifestation of a human psyche tearing itself apart, piece by piece, until the only thing that remains is violence. Automatic, unthinking, endless. Dead Space never tells you this directly because it doesn't need to. The metaphor is carved into every corridor, every corpse, every inch of human tissue covering the walls. You walk through medical bays meant to heal. Now they are butcheries. You walk through crew quarters built for rest. Now they are mausoleums. You walk through engineering wings meant to sustain life, and now they manufacture death. The ship is a mind, and the Necromorphs are the trauma consuming it. And Isaac moves through all of this as one intact thought left behind in a breaking skull. A single spark of rationality trying desperately to hold shape, while everything around him collapses into violent instinct. That's why the Necromorphs are terrifying. Not because they're monsters, but because they're so familiar. They are reminders that under pressure, any mind, yours, mine, Isaac's, can deform into something unrecognizable. Dead Space forces you to confront the truth without mercy. It strips away comfort, strips away company, strips away the illusion that sanity is a sturdy thing. And what remains is a single man walking through a nightmare built from pieces of the world he couldn't save. But the greatest horror on the Ishimura isn't the Necromorphs. It's Isaac. Not the engineer, not the survivor, but the mind inside of him, slowly losing its ability to hold itself together. Dead Space never shows his breaking point. It shows something worse. The long, inevitable descent towards it. At first, he holds on to purpose. Fix the ship, follow orders, and complete the mission. Purpose is the last line of defense for a collapsing mind. It gives structure where fear wants to spill. But as the corridors grow longer, and the voices grow quieter, and the bodies pile faster than he can understand, you feel something in him begin to thin. The silence stops being atmospheric. It becomes invasive. It presses on him, fills the space behind his eyes, whispers through the vents with the same voice he lost long ago before this mission even began. Nicole. She appears in flashes, almost like an angel, too gentle, too bright, too perfectly still for a place transformed by this horrible violence. not a memory, not a vision, a desperation, a mind clawing for something warm in a world entirely made of cold, dead steel. Isaac isn't just following orders anymore. He's following the last fragment of a life he can't let go. Because letting go would mean admitting the truth. That he has lost everything. That he has nothing left. That is the real collapse. Not madness, not hallucination. The slow erosion of everything that once anchored him. Hope becomes Hope becomes a hallucination. Love becomes a trap. Purpose a lie he tells himself to keep moving. He repairs machines because he can't repair the truth. He fights monsters because it's easier than fighting reality. He endures the loneliness because the alternative is facing the one thing that he fears more than death. The idea that he's already gone. That the person who boarded the Ishimura died long before any Necromorph ever even touched him. That all that remains is a hollow body walking through a world entirely made of cold metal and grief, pretending it's still there. The ship is just a mirror for Isaac, breaking, twisting, coming apart under forces it was never built to withstand or even understand. Every scream in its vents echoes the screams inside of Isaac. Every flickering light matches the small parts of hope fading in the reality. Isaac isn't surviving, he's unraveling. And dead space forces you to see every step of that descent, every painful inch forward towards the deep darkness inside of him.